Okay, YouTubers, this is the Angry Prepper. So today's video, we're going to talk about what if your neighbors come for your food. So guys, in a lot of movies we watch, there's always that point in dystopian movies, right, where it's the end of the world. And for example, a movie like The Road, right, where people are starving and they have to get food, or they try to get food where they can. And in a lot of those types of movies, that includes cannibalism. But now, we're not going to go that far. We're going to talk about what are you going to do if they come for your food? What is your next step? Now, a lot of people are under this misconception that if you make yourself look homely or weathered, thin, by wearing larger clothing, that people are going to automatically assume that you also don't have food and leave you alone. When you are starving, that is not the case. When people are starving, that's not the case. Sorry. They are going to come just to see if you have food, just to check. You could look like fucking Mobutu from Ethiopia, all skinnied out and shit, and they're still going to try to wonder whether or not you have food. Now, speaking of Ethiopians and Somalians, when everybody's starving the same way, you pretty much know that your next door neighbor doesn't have food because a warlord stole all of it, right? That's a different scenario. But in the case of America goes into collapse mode and everything is done, nothing is getting transported around the country, but you know that certain people in the neighborhood are well off, just that thought alone is going to be the reason why a lot of people who are starving are going to favor it at home. Start going over there, asking for food at first, wondering why, you guys are shut in and haven't come outside. And then they're going to start to come with all of these conspiracy theories of their own as to how you might have food in there. Meanwhile, you might not. But now, the flip side of that coin is if you're a prepper and they sort of know that, you've been putting food away because you always have a nosy neighbor in the neighborhood who's always watching everybody's movements. And that one neighbor is going to notice that you've been going to Costco frequently for the last 6 years. And they start to do the math in their head, and they're like, there's no way they ate all of that food. So then they come to the conclusion that you might have food. Now, that's that one nosy neighbor. But people who are suffering, people who are desperate, they're going to test any and every home. Especially for those that gather together to then converge on your home, because they have an idea that, one, you're a prepper, you're well off, you have a decent job, you made a lot of money, you're making frequent trips to Costco's. They notice all of that, and they come to your home. What do you do next? Now, in a short-term disaster, and you can all gauge what's a short-term disaster and what's not. For example, in Louisiana, the one family, if you will, who had food, who had power, if I'm not mistaken, more importantly, they had food, they had people showing up to their home asking them for food. Now, in the one case, the guy, let's say guy A, who's the prepper, he had food. He gave food to his neighbor, if I'm not mistaken. In turn, his neighbor, and he told his neighbor, don't say anything. His neighbor then turns around and obviously said something, and the word starts to spread. So they wind up coming over to his house, pressing him for food. And he had said, listen, I only have enough for my family. And in that case, which was Katrina, for those of you that didn't figure it out yet, it's Katrina where this happened. They knew it was going to be short term, but they just didn't know how long it was going to last. Anyway, that being said, the guy came outside with a shotgun, let one go in the air, and everybody fucking dispersed and went back into their homes. Said, if anybody steps foot on my property, I'm going to let you have it. Needless to say, things got back in order, and that family had to move out of the neighborhood because they made a stand and not wanting to give all their food away. And of course, those who weren't prepared, they don't see it that way. They just see a greedy asshole who didn't want to let go of any of his food or feed anybody else. Again, therein lies the other problem and the question, what do you do? Because you can't feed the neighborhood, but you also don't want to see people starve. And in a setting like that, or an event like that, like Katrina, where something could be long-term, or an extended event, where it's not going to last one day, it might last 3 months, but at the end of that 3 months, there's something coming in your way, something coming in your direction where help or whatever that is. With Katrina, a lot of people knew that there was going to be help because it only affected that area. It wasn't a nationwide event or worldwide event. That's what I mean, how you can gauge what's short-term and not, right? For example, the Trade Center going down, that was a short-term event, if you will, that affected a small area, not the rest of the world, right? So again, things like Flint, Michigan, right, where they had that bad water. Again, it was just that area, not the nation. So you get to gauge what's short-term and what's not. And if you are in a short-term event, do you feed everybody? Knowing that, all right, maybe in 2-3 weeks things are going to get back in order. Can we afford to give away our food? Now, in some cases, especially if you know the answer to that, you're probably going to give the food away. But if you don't, and again, it winds up being 3 to 6 months before you get any help, do you give your food away? And how do you treat that? How do you navigate that without being alienated? And when the situation's over, how do you avoid getting kicked out of your own neighborhood that you either A, grew up in or were just living in? Now, this guy moved. I don't know where he moved to, but that was one of those stories that I heard about Katrina. There were a lot of Katrina stories I heard. That one stood out to me because he ran into the same situation like that Twilight Zone episode, The Shelter, where everybody wanted inside to protect themselves from what was going on. So, again, guys, what do? You don't want to be the bad guy, because in movies versus reality, in movies, they paint everybody who doesn't want to let go of their food as a scumbag and selfish. And that is probably part of predictive programming, because anybody who doesn't give you food is going to be, you're automatically in your head going to think, he's an asshole, he's a piece of shit, because he's not feeding me. It's not his duty to feed you. As a prepper, it's our duty to protect our family and maybe our close friends. Maybe. It is not our job to feed the community. But the community, because they're so reliant on governmental help or whatever help that they're relying on you to help them all of a sudden. Meanwhile, keep in mind, some of these people never spoke to you a day in your life. You knew Harry. You never spoke to Harry since he moved to the neighborhood. Now all of a sudden Harry wants your help. So it's things like that we're going to run into. Now, do you let people have it? Do you threaten them? Do you tell them, listen, I only have enough food for my family, especially if they try to push through your doors to raid your home to see whether or not you have food? That is just a huge problem altogether. So how do you hide your preps better? That is the bigger question, again, because if you're having shit delivered to your home on a constant basis, if you are constantly coming from Costco or BJ's or whatever it is, people are taking note. How do you hide that? Now, it's easy, at least living in a city. I can hide it by throwing everything in a trash bag. They don't know what the fuck I'm bringing in. I could be bringing in fucking boots, used clothes, whatever it is. They don't know. And I think that would be the better way to go about it, especially if you have a nosy neighbor. If you have a nosy neighbor, you back your truck into your garage, close your garage door, and then you unload everything that needs to unload. That's also a better way. I know out of habit, a lot of people who have driveways and a garage, they just pull up into the driveway and pull everything out in there. It would be better to back it into a garage and hide it in that way. If you can do it. If you can't, garbage bag is probably the best bet, or luggage, or whatever it is. And I know that's a lot to do because you're making more trips than you really want to do. But if you're looking to hide your shit, so be it. That's possibly the better way to do it. Or you stack something on a dolly of some kind and cover it with a box. It's like a TV or dresser or some shit like that, just so people think that's what you're moving in. There's a lot of different ways you can do to disguise moving shit into your home so that the entire neighborhood's not peeping what you're doing, or that one nosy neighbor is not watching you closely as to what you're doing. Because believe me, there is a neighbor in every neighborhood that's watching you closely. Now, like I was saying about movies, again, movies are doing the predictive programming, making preppers turning out to be assholes. We're either A, selfish pricks, either B, hoarders, because that's another term you're going to hear. Well, you don't want to be hoarders like those preppers. You want to have enough food to... Don't. We're not hoarders, we're just preparing. Right? And these people, the media, whoever's in charge, are trying to make preppers now look like hoarders, because that they want a negative connotation with that, so people look at us as the enemy. So then they have a reason, or a valid reason, to attack us when they're hungry. So it's just something to keep in mind, guys. As more of these natural disasters happen, you're going to see more bad things about preppers. Probably both ways. You're probably going to see good shit about preppers, people like myself being on TV showing people how to prepare, and then you have other people talking about people like us and how we are bad to the community because we hoard all the food. Yeah, because we go to a supermarket and buy all of the Spam in one shot. Anyway, that's what they're trying to make it look like. That's what you're trying to make it seem like. So again, guys, question out to you guys. What would you do and how would you address the food situation? So should somebody come knocking on your door asking for food, and if you tell them no, what do you do after that when they keep pressing you? Anyway, guys, this is The Angry Prepper. Thank you for watching.